in the immortal words of Leonard's Losers, get me out of here, Percy. That wasn't a lot of fun.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama. AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Alabama internet legend Jimmy Stein. That's him. Thank you for being your first listen every single day. Thank you, every day, for being here every day. And thank you, newbies, for being here today. And thank you all for just being awesome every day. Jimmy, that was tough. Now, here's the thing. Before anybody panics or gets on here and says how awful we are and we're overrated and blah, 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 it is survive and advance. Survive and advanced. And, you know, it's you just got to take what you can take. And Robert Morris put up a good fight. I think Alabama clearly was the better team. Every time it seemed like Robert Morris would make a run, Alabama would make a run, and then you're like, okay, breathing room. And then we get an and one against them, or they'd hit a three, or we'd have 2 or 3 turnovers straight, something funky. And, you know, it just wasn't our best game, not by a long shot. But here's the thing. Rarely does any team in this tournament play its best 6 games in a row. So maybe we played our worst game early.
Could be. I think in Alabama's other deep runs in the tournament, there's always been a game. I mean, I remember, Grand Canyon. Alabama didn't beat Grand Canyon. That team made it to the Final Four and didn't beat Grand Canyon 98-60. I mean, and I remember, I think it was Godfrey's team that made it the Elite Eight had a tough game in the first round. But I think it is about survive and advance. I think Alabama had issues in the game, and some of these issues are things we've seen all season long. But I want to reiterate, there's a difference between not playing well and not playing hard. Those two things are not the same thing. I thought Alabama played reasonably hard, not hard enough at times. I think Grant Nelson entering the game changed the second half, and it's because Grant Nelson plays so hard, it's a little bit contagious. I think we give so much credit to Mo Diabate for being the living, breathing embodiment of the Hard Hat Award that we probably don't give enough credit to Grant for being a similar type player. Grant plays hard. His effort is never, ever questioned. Now, it doesn't always look beautiful. It doesn't always look pretty. It doesn't always look like he belongs in the NBA. But Grant plays really hard. And I do think putting Grant in at that point in the game was a stroke of genius. It was a little bit risky because what if you put Grant in and he hurts his knee again, and then you get a 1-point win and you're like, now we got no chance next game. But putting Grant in at that time, I'm not saying it won the game, but I do think it changed the game. Alabama played better after Grant came in. I'm going to credit it, Luke, because when Grant came in, Grant played his normal level of effort that was just contagious. And from that point on, Alabama became very tough to beat.
Yeah, even though ironically, when he was in, initially is when Robert Morris made the run to take the lead. I think you're absolutely right. He played hard. And I thought Trenton Strickland said something good. He said, look, for the first time, now, I mean, that's not necessarily true, but for the first time, it felt like Grant was getting calls versus getting called. Grant sometimes does seem to get the bad end of some calls more so than anybody else. And I think part of that is because he's so unconventional looking. He's like a baby giraffe out there sometimes. But again, it is sad in a way, mildly sad, that this team needed to break glass for emergency Grant Nelson. And so be it. But, it's, again, this is a tournament of survive and advance. We're going to say that 100 times throughout this particular podcast.
So true. It's not a cliche. 1,000% true.
God, I got a shadow on my nose or something, and it makes it look like I have something on my face, and I don't. That is so weird.
I'm always the one with something on my face, and this is kind of an emergency setup. I'm not in my normal spot. I'm at Tuscaloosa, and this is an emergency live setup, so apologize for that.
Lake Martin Young Professional says, what changed the second half were foul calls on Robert Morris? Yeah, I mean,
A little bit.
I think Robert Morris probably was called. There weren't a lot of fouls called in the first half. There weren't a lot of fouls called in the first part of the second half.
I like complaining about officials when we win and don't like complaining about officials when we lose. We talk about that all the time. It sounds like whining when you lose. When you win, it sounds like you're making a legitimate claim. How was there no foul call when Jaron Stevenson was assaulted in what would be a felony in 50 states and was not even a foul? When Jaron hurt his wrist, that was
egregious.
Outrageous.
Now, it was bad and it was egregious and it happened really early. And because Jaron came back in and didn't hurt badly, I'm not super worried about it. And because we won, had we lost, I'd be going nuts about it. Even though, frankly, it happened so early it shouldn't have mattered. Let's give Robert Morris a lot of credit before we go off talking about how Alabama made them look good. Whatever. Let's give them some credit. They played really hard. They could have folded early. I mean, Alabama took a double-digit lead early, and Robert Morris just kept hanging around. Kids got alligator blood. I can't. That's my best Rounders impersonation of Teddy KGB.
You quote Rounders a lot. You know, I haven't seen Rounders in over a decade. You quote it a lot. That's a thing for you.
Justin Clayton, a buddy of mine who's actually an Auburn fan, but I'm glad to see him in here. He said, "I thought Cam Woods was supposed to be good." I think sometimes Justin, Cam Woods played very famously on the same AAU team with Mark Sears. He also played with Kool-Aid McKinstry in high school. I think he was Player of the Year in Alabama, maybe for 2 years.
Twice.
He was
two-time 6A Player of the Year.
Yeah, he was a dude, and I'm wondering if he didn't push himself a little hard.
Yeah,
he did not have a good game.
He wanted it. Sometimes you can want it too bad. I think he wanted it too bad, and he didn't have a great game. We need to talk about the good and the bad, and I thought the good was the way the team played when Grant came in. Cliff Amore carried the team in the first half. I thought it was a great half offensively for Amore in the first half. Mark Sears, his guttiness and his refusal to lose when the game got tight. I want to credit Mark Sears for that. But gosh, I don't know that did LeBaron Philon score 1 point?
Now he only took one shot, Jimmy.
It never felt right for Philon today. Chris Youngblood was also off. I mean, Youngblood, I know he made at least 1 3, but Youngblood was not himself. Several guys just didn't. Jaron Stevenson, I didn't think played particularly well, but I'll give him a break because his wrist was half broke. And then he had to come in and play with that wrap on it, and so I'm gonna cut him a break for today. But we did have some guys that didn't make their normal big contribution, and who knows, maybe they're the guys that are the reason Alabama wins Sunday if that happens. But I didn't think Philon or Youngblood sort of showed up, and defensively it wasn't great at times, and whoever was guarding 3 for them obviously struggled. I think we put several different guys on him and nothing worked, which is crazy because that guy is a second team All Horizon guy and known for his defense. And we somehow let him score close to 30. But gosh, I guess we've done that a few times this year because defense is not this team's thing. They're not as bad as some of our fans make it out to be, but defensively we're not great. And that showed up today at times.
Yeah, let's talk about why it is that it seems like an opposing player always has a career day against us after this. I'm going to talk a little Nissan now because, Nissan's awesome. You love Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada PRO-4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by twin-turbo V6 engines, or just engine. If it had 2, mind-blowing. Delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada PRO-4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada PRO-4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada PRO-4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Now let's talk a little 5-hour energy. Look, y'all know I love 5-hour energy. Most people are like, Luke, you don't need 5-hour energy. You've got an ADHD. I do, but and usually I am pretty with it. But man, I'm telling you, when you're like me and you get up really early in the morning, and then you have to stay up at night for some reason, I need a 5-hour energy. Daylight savings snuck up on me again. And if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep like I am, 5-hour energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-hour energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Head to 5hourenergy.com, find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, peach mango, and much more. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-hour energy shot at your local grocery store or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized with 5-hour energy. It's going to be something when somebody invents 6-hour energy.
Unless you take it at 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah. And then somebody
always do the math about bedtime, people.
So Dickerson, this cat, seemingly out of nowhere, all we had talked about was Cam Woods. Dickerson just ate our lunch. And, he did some things that really boosted the team for them. I mean, he had that huge putback dunk. I think that he was hard pressed to stop. Now, another question is, well, first of all, the question is, why does somebody always go for a career night against us? Number one. Number two, why didn't Omari play so much in the second half?
Okay. Here's just my gut visceral reactions to those things. Number one, someone does not always have a career night against us. I know it seems that way. Luke's right. It seems that way. And we've talked about it so many times. This is what, our 35th game, 34th game. We've talked about it so many times, but it hasn't happened 34 times. It's happened too frequently, but not 34 times. Number one. Number two, we've already mentioned it. We're not elite defensively. Alabama's elite offensively. We're the only team that plays college basketball. And keep in mind, there's like 330. We're the only team that's averaged over 90 points a game 2 years in a row. No one else has done that in this sport. So Alabama's elite offensively, not so elite defensively. There's give and take. Football works the same way. Basketball definitely works that way. Alabama's not elite defensively, which means the other team's probably going to have a pretty decent offensive night. Number three, it's just individual matchups. And if I said, okay, who is our shutdown interior defender? Diabate's good. Grant's good at times. Amori can block some shots and rebound. But I wouldn't necessarily say that we have a shutdown defender on the team. And I think we tried a few things with Dickerson that didn't work. The thing that's a little odd to me is here's kind of a no-name guy. He wasn't their best player. Seven's their best player. The Figueroa. I'm butchering his name. Yeah, that guy. He's their best player, number 7. And then we're, of course, looking at Cam Woods because we know him and sort of, I wouldn't say recruited him. We certainly evaluated him probably 2 or 3 different times. But I think Dickerson was a surprise to us. We just didn't defend him well. But I think it's those 3 things. Number 1, doesn't always happen. Number 2, we're not elite defensively. Number 3, don't really have a shutdown guy we can put on him. And you add it all up, and I guess that just happens from time to time. For instance, Hubbard from Mississippi State went off on us at least once for sure, and sort of the second time too. And he's a perimeter player. We didn't really have a shutdown guy for him either. So I think it's just going to happen. At this point, you are what you are, and a great coach will coach around that and find a way to win anyhow. But hey, defense is just not going to be this team's thing. This is not 1992 Alabama defense, 2016 Alabama defense football-wise. This is a team that's just going to give up some points. The good news is they almost always score more than the other guys.
Yeah, I saw on here, Andrew Hill says, Aiden is also starting to become a liability. I need him to drive more and be aggressive at the rim. I don't know. I don't know if he's a liability. I mean, he hit a big 3 earlier today. Everybody was off on their threes. I mean,
it was.
I'm not going to fault him.
Was it the story to you?
What?
I mean, if we had a normal 3-point shooting day, I don't think this game is close.
Well, the starters were like 1 of 13 from beyond the arc. It's
off.
Yeah, Mark is like 4 of his last, I can't remember, like 20-something 3-pointers. I mean,
Youngblood off. Like you said, Phylon didn't even attempt one.
Yeah. I thought Phylon played pretty well. He had 8 assists. Mark,
He's always active.
Mark Sears quietly had an unbelievable game. 22 points, I think, 10 assists, 5 rebounds. I mean, incredible game. But it just wasn't pretty.
The effort was good. That was a good example of, I would say, he didn't score well in Nashville. But I would say Mark today was a really good example of how sometimes the shooting isn't there, but the effort is something that always should be there. Mark's effort was good.
In the second half, it was. In the first half, I don't think it was.
His shot just would not fall. And I do think, Luke, and boy, this is a great subject for a podcast. We're going to have a basketball coach on one day to talk about this. What is the percentage of young basketball players? Let's remember, these guys, I know they make money now, but they're all really young guys. What percentage of basketball players, Luke, struggle on offense? It's a day they can't make a shot, and it carries over to the defense. And I think that's most players. That's not Alabama. I think that's most players at that age. It's going to, when they can't make the shot on the defensive end, they're in their heads, they're worried about their shot. And I think that's normal. I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying, hey, I think that's how it is.
Brandon Schlesinger said, saw you guys in the documentary, meaning The Tide That Binds. Yes, we are in that. In fact, we're going to be in it a lot more. Just a little side note. Was it 2 weeks ago, Jimmy, the documentarian, I guess it's right. He called us and said, look, I need to get some more sound bites.
Yeah.
So, and so
we're going to be in it a lot. We're going to be in it a lot more down the stretch.
So appreciate your watching that. Glad that, we were in it this last one, and we weren't even talking. It was just me like doing like this and you doing like that. Like he was talking about different podcasts and fans or whatever. But anyway, going back.
In other words, normal.
Mo Diabate is still he does something doesn't show up in the stat sheet, and the average NCAA watcher is not going to know about this play. The play where he saved the ball inbounds off a steal was incredible. This guy is just, all he does is plays that help you win. You might lose. You're not going to lose because of Mo D. You might lose because we're off. We might lose because we can't shoot free throws. We might lose because we don't get offensive rebounds and they do. But it ain't going to be because of Mo Diabate.
Oh, and again, the effort is contagious, just like good shooting. And the good shooting there was no one that was shooting it well, so no one shot it well. But Mo played hard, and Grant played really hard, and I think and Mark Sears played hard. That stuff is sort of contagious, but people always need to keep in mind that playing hard does not mean playing well. I don't think Alabama played great today, but I do think they played pretty hard. They played hard enough to win. It wasn't 40 minutes of awesome effort, but for the most part, it was enough to win. And Robert Morris is pretty good. I know they're in the Horizon League. I know they were a 15. They were 16-1 in their last 17 games. That's hard to do against air. And the Horizon League isn't great. But let's remember, Butler's come out of that league to make a couple of Final Four runs.
Final game runs.
And Robert Morris, Luke's talked about this a lot, which is a great point about how should we be rewarding teams from these leagues that get hot in their conference tournament when they've been kind of bad all year. Robert Morris was not that team. They won the regular season and their conference tournament. So they've been a dominant team in their league, 16-1 in their last 17. This is a team that finds a way, that's used to winning games. And I'm not saying they're great. I'm not saying Alabama played great. They didn't. But Robert Morris is a good basketball team, and they were a tough out today.
Yeah, and we were a 22.5-point favorite, and we didn't come close to covering. It's fair to complain. There's no doubt about it. Bottom line, though, we did survive. We do advance. You could have pulled a Clemson. Clemson looked awful. I mean, just talking about the tournament in general right now, Clemson was atrocious. I mean, so bad. They had 13 points at the half, I think. Could have pulled to Georgia. Georgia looked like they just did not want to be there. Now, that part of that is the difference between a Gonzaga team that's made it to like X amount of straight tournaments, X amount of straight Sweet 16s or whatever. I mean, Gonzaga's a machine. That Georgia got a bad matchup. But again, some things happen. I mean, Missouri. Now, Alabama seeded higher than all these teams, of course.
Missouri beat Alabama. Missouri beat Alabama.
Yeah, and I think Alabama is still better than all those teams. And here's I'm going to say it again. You rarely play 6 great games on the way to a championship. You know, Alabama's first Elite 8 run, we had to scratch, claw, fight to beat, what was it, Illinois State or Southern Illinois? Which one? I can't remember.
I don't remember, but I think
Southern Illinois, but I'm not sure.
Okay. It was the first round, and then there was a run.
Yeah. Now last year we started off gangbusters. We blew out College of Charleston. Remember? So we're going to play either St. Mary's or Vanderbilt. I don't really have a preference. I'll be honest with you. I don't really care who it is. I think now it's just once you get past that first round game, especially if you're a higher seed, from that point on, everybody you play is going to be pretty good.
Yeah. And St. Mary's is the matchup that would be the most interesting because of the styles. For those unaware, you know, Alabama, this is a definite hare versus the tortoise situation when Alabama plays St. Mary's, with Alabama being the hare and St. Mary's being the tortoise, right? But Alabama is literally one of the very fastest teams in the country. St. Mary's is the slowest. And by that, I mean tempo, but the speed at which they play, the number of possessions in a game is what I'm talking about. St. Mary's plays at a glacial pace. They play like that tortoise with 1988 Charles Barkley on their back. I mean, that's how slow St. Mary's is, which is going to make for a fascinating matchup. I think basketball nerds that don't care about Alabama or St. Mary's will be fascinated with this game because it's so, hey, this is Usain Bolt versus the slowest thing possible.
Versus Andre Smith without that shirt on with the still shot of him jogging and he needed a man's ear.
So that would make it interesting. But Vanderbilt is in the SEC, and I'll get criticism for this, but I tend to pull for the SEC teams in the tournament because I know them and I know their personnel, and we know them so well. I tend to pull for them, so I hope Vanderbilt wins, but I'm expecting it to be St. Mary's.
Yeah, and here's the thing about St. Mary's, too, in Alabama. What's really interesting, okay, so St. Mary's, it plays at a iceberg's pace, right? But so what I'm saying is if Alabama is able to get a lead, you would think that plays right in Alabama's hands. Conversely, Alabama, I know their defense has gotten better since Missouri, but it wasn't great against Florida on the last game, and it wasn't great today. So maybe if St. Mary's can look at this like, hey, we can go in there and score, and then all we got to do is play our great D like we do. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Alabama's going to be Alabama's going to be a big favorite against either one. If it's St. Mary's, just a guess, I think Alabama would be favored by 10 or 12, and if it's Vanderbilt, it might be 14. I mean, I think Alabama's going to be a significant favorite against either one.
Andrew Hill says, what you're saying is a significant understatement on pace of play. Alabama is ranked number 1, and St. Mary's is ranked 359th per advanced stats. Wisconsin is also 145th. But I don't know that I don't want to play somebody like that because if Alabama can get a 10-point lead, it seems like it's a 20-point lead against regular teams. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like if they play that way.
Robert Morris, by the way, doesn't play fast, and Alabama won the tempo. I think Nate Oates talked about him the first time out. The first time they talked to Nate Oates during the game, he said, I like this tempo. That's because Alabama was playing faster and closer to what the tempo they wanted as opposed to Robert Morris. And I think ultimately that's another thing that helped Alabama win the game, right? I mean, it's a pretty quick game up and down the court. That plays into Alabama's hands. Against St. Mary's and in against Wisconsin, if you advance and end up with the Badgers, that's exactly what Alabama's got to learn to do, get slow teams off of their pace and onto theirs. Alabama wants to run and make it a quick, fast game. If you play against St. Mary's, that's the challenge. You match up against Vanderbilt, obviously, pretty well. Alabama's already played Vandy once. It was in Tuscaloosa. I remember the one thing I remember from the game, Lucas, when the game was over, me and you discussed that may have been one of Alabama's better games of the whole year. So, obviously Vanderbilt's a good matchup for Alabama. We've seen it earlier.
What have you thought overall about the SEC and the tournament in general? I mean, obviously Mississippi State loses today, Alabama wins. Texas lost against Xavier. They blew a big lead. Missouri ended up losing to Drake. I told everybody to take Missouri because everybody was on Drake. Turns out Drake's pretty doggone good. Who else? Auburn wins, but they didn't look necessarily great.
Arkansas had a nice win.
Arkansas had a nice win against Kansas, but I'll tell you the truth. I heard the TNT crew kept saying, man, that was a good game. I thought it was a game. Both teams played equally mediocre, and it just made it look like a good game. I didn't think there was a lot of quality play out there.
I saw Stuart Mandel, who I do like, by the way. I like Stu. A lot of you may not, but I like Stuart Mandel, a real bright guy. He seemed to sort of relish that the SEC was 4-4, after the first 8 games, and like, hey, this is the deepest, best conference ever, and they're 4-4. What I want people to look at is the seedings and the matchups. There's only been one bad loss. Texas lost, sure, but they were an 11 and they lost to an 11. Mississippi State lost, sure, but they were an 8 and Baylor was a 9. That's a coin flip game. Georgia against Gonzaga. I mean, you can't tell me that that's like, oh, Georgia should win that game by 20. I mean, it's Gonzaga. They sort of have owned this tournament for a while. And then now the fourth matchup, that's true. Drake, true upset over Missouri.
Missouri had a chance too.
They did. They came all the way back. I watched a lot of it. They came all the way back. But what I'm saying is, it's not like the highest seeded SEC teams have lost to. It's not like Alabama lost to Robert Morris, which didn't happen. But none of the losses have been like that, other than arguably Missouri. So I wouldn't read too much into it. The SEC's lack of success so far. There's only been one true upset: Drake over Missouri.
Yeah, a lot is going to ride on Ole Miss, North Carolina, because North Carolina got super hot and ACC's been getting killed, and they should be. And everybody was just lauding the SEC with praise. Turns out Ole Miss is catching North Carolina at the very wrong time, if you ask me. That's what I'm worried about.
They probably are, and I get that. And what people need to realize is about North Carolina barely made the tournament, and Ole Miss was solidly in. It's another SEC team that could lose. North Carolina is probably made up of some dudes, real recruiting dudes. I mean, how many Ole Miss players turned down the opportunity to play at North Carolina? It might be one or two. I don't know. But I'm just saying that on the surface, should we be shocked that North Carolina has a more talented roster than Ole Miss? But, they'll make a big deal of it if Ole Miss loses. And like Luke said, I think North Carolina underachieved, and now they're pissed off.
All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back probably after Alabama's next game. It may be Jimmy going solo this time. Who knows? Or maybe you can have Michael Southern, because I will be on spring break. I'm going to be here as much as I can, but going to the Dominican Republic. So it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. But Alabama survives and advances. Y'all relish in this. It is the salad days. Be happy. We won. It could have gone the other way and didn't. So until next time, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.